Well, hey everybody, Acts chapter 15 today, and so excited about being able to share with you on this chapter. I actually just finished up my first two classes of my PhD work, and in one of my classes, I actually did a report, an exegetical analysis on Acts chapter 15, and so I could talk for quite a long time about what I discovered, but they want me to keep this within like 5 minutes, so let's dive in. So Acts chapter 15, what you're going to find as you read today is that this is an incredible narrative of several different voices that come together to decide who's in and who's out of this movement called that became called Christianity. So you have the party of the Pharisees. There were Christians who actually came out of and were still a part of the Pharisaical group. And so these were the same religious leaders that killed Jesus. So that group, some of them came to know Jesus and followed him as their Messiah. There were other Jews as well that came in to know Christ, and they wanted the Gentiles who were converting under Paul and Barnabas. They wanted these Gentiles to go through the same purity customs, the same religious code as they had to go through being Jews, not to become Christian, just simply for being Jewish. Like circumcision, that was a big issue in Acts chapter 15, where this group of people wanted the Gentile converts to be circumcised in order to be Christian, which now doesn't make a lot of sense. But in those days, the majority of Christians were Jews. That's how the movement began. And so they had been circumcised into Judaism, and so they were connecting the practice of Judaism with Christianity, and these Gentile converts were like, I gotta be circumcised. So Paul fights for them in Acts chapter 15, and they gather what's called the Jerusalem Council, and they have this discussion and debate, and those are the words that are used, debate and discussion. It's like this intense dialogue about what's going to be required. And Peter gets up and he shares his story of Cornelius and the dream. You remember the dream in Acts chapter 10, don't eat, he says, I've never eaten this meat. And God says, no, what I've made sacred, don't call unsacred. And so Peter goes and visits Cornelius. So Peter recounts that encounter in Acts chapter 15. And then Paul and Barnabas share their stories of traveling throughout the Gentile world and Gentiles coming to know Christ and signs and wonders, and it's amazing. And then James gets up. He's the half brother of Jesus, and he gets up and he kind of summarizes what's been discussed, and he says this: let's not make it hard for the Gentiles to know God. Let's not make it hard. They did still have some purity codes that they took from Judaism into Christianity. Things James says, don't eat meat strangled from sacrifice to idols, don't drink blood, and keep away from sexual immorality. That was it. Hey, circumcision, non-circumcision doesn't matter. Just here's some few things, right? But other than that, James was like, let's not make it hard. Why do we make it so hard for people to know Jesus? Now I'm asking you. I'm not talking about Acts 15 anymore. I'm like, why do we in the church today make it so hard for people to follow Jesus? We have purity codes still that, you really can't be a part of our community. You can't know God. You can't become a follower of Jesus until you start to follow our guidelines, our purity guidelines, our sexual guidelines, and it's just clear to me that in Acts 15, it's telling us that no, let's not make it hard. And as a result of this Jerusalem Council, there was this movement of Gentile conversions that you follow through Paul and Barnabas and Paul and Silas, and you see this movement of Gentiles that come to know Christ, that the Christianity just explodes because of this critical decision by this group of diverse voices that decided we need to not make it hard for people to come to know Jesus. And because of that, you and I are here today. And I want you to ask yourself today, what in my life, as I think about my relationships with people outside of the church, what do I exude, or what do I say, or how do I live my Christianity that it would make them think it's hard to become a Christian? I'm not saying it should be easy to be a Christian, because it's not. But it's not supposed to be hard to become a Christian. Think about that. Hope to see you guys online the rest of this week and next weekend as we finish up our Acts series. And God bless.